Welcome once again to the Vantage Performance Podcast. I'm Phil Dobbie. Today, high performance teams. Now, it goes without saying that every business needs to operate at maximum efficiency, but do they? Well, when the business is in trouble and there's a need for a turnaround, then a lot of things have to happen very quickly to get things heading in the right direction. And to undertake a massive change in the business takes a lot of fast work. So at that point, you need a high performance team. Imagine then, when you take that learning, having been through that experience, and you come out the other end with a new way of operating and continue with it beyond those hard times, imagine the impact that's going to have. I mean, your business is going to continue to grow. You're going to continue to adapt. You're going to win market share. All of a sudden, you become a formidable force. So what even if your business isn't in dire straits? It's time to question whether you could do more, whether you could develop a high-performance team. So let's talk to Michael Fingland about this. He's the owner and CEO of Vantage Performance. Michael, let's look at those companies that are in trouble, first of all. I mean, they've engaged you guys to help with the turnaround. So how long are we talking about to turn a company that was in trouble into a company that's going to become a high-performance company that, you know, other people are going to look at in awe, I guess?
Yeah, Phil, the three critical phases to every turnaround or performance improvement project. The first critical phase, when a client presents in some form of financial or operational crisis, the first 100 days is all about stability. So rapid deployment of our team to look at cash flow, working capital, finance facilities, sorting their working capital and looking at ways we can stabilise the business from a cash flow point of view. That then gives us time to, in parallel with them, working on all the key issues that got us into this position in the first place.
Yeah.
What solutions can we bring to the table, and then start looking at putting together a turnaround plan, which we can then sell to all the key stakeholders to maintain or strengthen their support. So that first critical 100 days is that first phase where it's all about stability, convincing the stakeholders that we've got a plan and it's a viable plan and we're into execution mode. The next period of 6 to 12 months is all about that execution phase. Yeah. So, and we're working towards that high performance culture.
So a little over a year, you're leaving a company. I mean, very differently. I mean, it's a bit like, isn't it? Those large ships that you see that take forever to turn around, and bloody difficult to turn around. So that 100 days, I guess it's critical, but a lot of that is. It sounds like a lot of that is just number crunching, looking at the figures in the beginning.
About 25-30% is the number crunching. So in that first 100 days, whilst we're doing a lot of financial work to stabilise the business, there's a lot of operational restructuring that's done in the business as well to start addressing productivity, low morale, issues with the corporate brand. If there are some issues with the connectivity through to their customer base. So a lot of those things are being worked on in that first 100 days, but roughly a third of the time is spent on financial restructuring, roughly one third on operational, and the rest is a huge focus on managing all the key stakeholders to get that position of stability. And then as we start implementing, and execution is so critical through all those phases, but from 100 days through to the end of that first 12 months, that's all about incremental improvements in the business, getting the business model right, and getting the business back to positive cash flow, positive earnings, and then some businesses can turn very quickly, and it's a 3-month liquidity issue, and we can solve it pretty quickly. But a lot of turnarounds, you're talking 12, 18 months, because there's usually a couple of shocks to the business or some hiccups along the way that are from the external environment. So that 12, 18 months is your typical time frame to get a business back to or moving it towards that high performance process. Right. And then it's just continuing to build upon there.
So companies that haven't reached that stage yet, who want to become high performance, I guess, what should they do? I guess there's an issue here, because there might be some companies that are, how do you know? There might be some companies that are saying, well, we are a high performance team, but maybe they're not. Maybe they've got it wrong. Maybe things are moving faster than they imagine. They think that they're working quickly, but their competitor down the road is actually, at a different rate of knots.
Yeah, and a lot of, and this is true from SME through to large corporate, which is our client base. A lot of corporates, a lot of management teams only compare. Well, one, they may just be comparing themselves to the industry, but that sells a lot of businesses short. You should always be aiming to actually outperform industry benchmarks. And that's what high performance culture is all about. High performance teams are all about, is not just trying to match industry best practice, but trying to get 10-20% above that. And that's what our core focus is, shooting for above industry best practice. And roughly half of our clients are in some form of turnaround phase. The other half, we're working with high growth businesses that are making money, and it's all about how do we turn them into high performance businesses and actually get to that position ahead of where their competitors are. And the edge that we've got in any firm that does turnaround, the skills you learn in turnaround really hone your ability to then work with normal performance improvement type assignments and actually get results much faster. Because in turnarounds you're always working in very tight timetables. You've got some really fundamental issues to deal with. You've got to get to the answers, or you've got to get to the key issues very, very quickly. You've got to stabilise the business. You've got to be able to identify what are the solutions that are going to work, what are the key changes to the business model that will maintain or rebuild support with the stakeholders to give them faith that we know what got us here and we know how we're going to get out. And then that all has to be done in a really rapid timetable. So get to those answers very quickly, and that's 20% of it. 80% of it is execution. But relentless execution and the nimbleness to be able to modify the plans along the way because of those external impacts that might happen during that sort of 12-18 month process.
So that's in a turnaround situation. In a high performance team that's maybe not turning around, they've got to be identifying those same critical issues as they come along and acting on them quickly. Is that the difference? The fact that they're continually questioning, is that what makes a high performance team different from a team that's performing less well? Well,
a high performance team are always analysing. They're always testing and measuring their initiatives, their business model. And the critical skill in turnarounds that we apply and have applied over the last 15 years into our performance improvement assignments is that ability to rapidly analyse with clear objectivity and knowing what initiatives will work and what won't. In turnarounds, you don't have an option of executing the wrong strategy because you fail. Yeah. So that ability to continually hone that skill in a tight timetable means that you can deploy initiatives in the high performance space much quicker and much faster than our clients' competitors will be doing it. So you get a jump on the market, and you can start deploying those initiatives much faster and get quicker traction, so they can start taking market share off the competitors.
Right, but you've got to know how to do it because there's a danger, isn't there, that if you're always changing direction, it can almost be panic. That you're just clutching at straws sometimes.
Companies in a turnaround mode, they may be, but once you've done years and years and years of turnarounds, you just know what initiatives will work and what won't. So we reduce the mistake rate, if you like, when a client's in turnaround or if they're in a performance improvement phase. So we just know what to deploy and when to deploy it and how to motivate and rally the troops to keep the staff motivated, keep the stakeholders motivated, keep the communication going so everyone knows what the plan is and how to execute and what it means for them and what part they play. The skills we learn in turnaround just enable us to do it in a much faster timetable, so it brings forward the results of those performance improvement initiatives, and we galvanise the culture in a much faster way as well. And that's what it's all about. Really high performance management teams just know how to analyse their business consistently, know how to deploy initiatives to address key issues they've got in a very tight timetable. Companies that are slow to react to issues like that often then find themselves in a turnaround situation over time, and it's just really we're applying best practice management techniques in a tight timetable, and so you just hone those skills, and then the key is to embed that knowledge that we've got into our clients. So we're turning each division, if you like, into their own high performance team. So we can then pull out and they continue on with that journey. So are there any high performance
teams that we might have seen, something that that's visible? A lot of this obviously goes on behind closed doors. In our everyday lives, what teams do you see that work well?
I'll answer that in two parts. The analogy that we use here is when you think about a pit crew in a Formula One race.
Yeah.
That's a high performance team in every aspect. You've got you've got a tight timetable. You've got to get the car in and out in a very rapid scale. There's multiple teams working on the car at any one time, and multiple initiatives underway, and they've got to be in sync. That's a high performance team personified, and that's really what our turnaround team and what every really good turnaround team is like. And you're trying to instill that culture into every business.
Is it sustainable? Can you keep that up? I mean, they go and have a few beers after a race. They don't only do it for a short period of time. Can a business keep that sort of momentum?
They have to, and that's the secret and the key attribute of every high performance team is you go slow when you need to, when you can, but it's the ability to ramp up and rapidly deploy initiatives when you have to. That's a critical component to every high performance business.
And have they got flexibility built into that? I mean, you get the impression, don't you, that everyone's got their job there, in the pits. Do they have flexibility in what they're doing, or are they sort of pre-programmed to do the same things over and over again?
Flexibility is absolutely key, and being nimble. So knowing, because sometimes you might have the best initiatives in place, but an external shock might happen, which is outside your control. So the ability to actually stop and turn and redeploy those initiatives at a later date and replace them with something else in the meantime, that is critical, that nimbleness and that flexibility. And so if you're going back to that sort of pit crew analogy, another car might have come up the inside in the pit lane and actually disrupted the work that's going on, or there might be a fuel leak. So that ability to rapidly bring something else in, such as the fire crew, if that's the issue, put it out and then get back to what you were doing. That's really what is critical in any high-performance business, is that flexibility to stop and turn and be nimble and then get back to the core game.
It's a danger as well that some businesses tend to think in a too linear a fashion. You've got to do a lot of things at once, really, haven't you? If you're doing things quick, there's a lot of things happening in that pit stop. And everyone's working, I think you said, it's in tandem. It's more than in tandem, isn't it? Because there's so many of them, and it's all somehow coordinated.
Yeah, and that's a skill that every CEO today has to have in spades. The ability to manage multiple teams, and that stakeholder management piece that I was talking before, that there has to be an overweight skill set in every CEO today and the board and owners of the business to have that relentless multiple focus on stakeholders from all areas, so employees, staff, customers, unions, shareholders, the market, analysts, financiers. You have to have that in your vision and have a strategy to manage them relentlessly to keep them supportive of the plans you've got in place.
So it's all about execution, isn't it? You've said, obviously you've got to find out where the issues are and continually ask yourself what new issues have come up so you can tackle them. But it is all to do with the execution. So where are most businesses letting themselves down here? Because some businesses just take a hell of a long time to get anything done.
Well, there's two key components to that. 20% of it is getting to the answers quickly. Yeah. A lot of businesses muddle along and they're not prepared to think radically enough to get to the key answers of what needs to be done, that first 20%. So they take 3, 6, 9 months too long to get there. And often in today's environment, you've got to be thinking quite radically. Intel, going back to the 70s, early 80s, they were into memory chips. That was their big product, and they were market leader in memory chips back then, the DRAMs. And along came the Japanese market, and prices fell 80% in 2-3 years. Yeah. They were then faced with, do we continue with memory chips, or do we totally turn 180 and go into microprocessors? Now, that's a situation and a perfect example where a business made a radical business decision and went and totally changed their product range into microprocessors. And we know what the end result was there. If they had stayed in memory chips, they wouldn't be here today. So businesses, and this personifies what a lot of businesses are not doing at the moment. They're not thinking radically enough. And the secret, and one of the key things that we've learned over the last 15, 20 years in doing turnarounds is there have to be 1 or 2 big strategic decisions made to change the course. Tinkering around the edges just does not work in 90% of the cases.
Yeah.
You need to be thinking radically, and you need to get to those answers quickly. And that's what most businesses don't do. And that's still only 20%. That's still only 20% of the answer. Then you've got the execution phase, which is 80%. And that skill of being really focused, managing those multiple things in tandem, managing those stakeholders all the way through, not just the core initiatives, but all the parties that have an impact on those initiatives. And that ability to be nimble and change pitch as you're going through that phase. That's the hardest bit of any turnaround and any wider performance improvement type initiative. But
this sounds like a job for two different leaders to me, though, in a way. The person who might be able to say, well, look, I can get to the root of the issues here and make some strategic decisions about where we're heading, could very well be a very different person to the person who's actually going to execute that plan very well. Yeah. And yet are we expecting too much from one person, I guess?
No, we're not. It is often the case in a sort of large corporate situation where a business in a really dire financial position needs a turnaround type person to go in there and lead the business, as CEO or as a GM below the CEO, to really make those critical decisions, sell the plan to all the stakeholders, and then execute. And then once the business is back to stability and it's back into growth phase, then bring in that person exits, or you bring in more of a growth CEO or GM then. But often though, and that's a mistake in turnarounds, is to go in and replace the CEO first off. That's often the worst thing you can do straight away. Often all that's needed is to supplement the incumbent CEO or GM with a chief restructuring officer or a turnaround professional that sits in the management team and provides that critical advice, the objectivity, and then they take charge of implementing a lot of those initiatives to allow the CEO to stay focused on the core business. So it's not about replacing or having two different types of CEOs. It's about bringing in the skills and that clear objectivity and the execution skill with the additional hiring of one or two specialists in that area. So you can keep the management team intact and they keep focused on the core business and managing the core business whilst those restructuring activities are being dealt with by a professional that's come in as an interim executive into that business team. Yeah. That also plays a role in advising the board as well. That's often the answer, as opposed to having two different CEOs.
So well before you get to the stage, well, maybe not well before, but before you get to the stage at some point for that need for a turnaround and trying to avoid it, there's probably a lot of companies now who are looking at a few metrics that are not heading in the right direction, and they quite possibly are saying, oh, well, that's the economy. That's causing that. I mean, it's a dangerous time, isn't it? Because if times were good and they were looking at some of those statistics, they might be going, these figures are going down, that's not good. But now they're blaming external factors. If whether they're internal or external, those figures need to be turned around. And I guess that's why every company needs to think in terms of being a high-performance team all the time, whether they're in trouble or not, or whether they've started to turn in the wrong direction.
Absolutely. And this is not a one-off thing. You've got to embed this process into the culture of the business at every level, and that's what I was talking about before. We always embed this knowledge and the systems and the tools and the way we do things into our clients. So we know that when we pull back, and we might now just be sitting on their board or just in a mentoring type capacity, we know that those philosophies have been embedded in there, and that process just continues on. But one of the critical things about the current climate that every business needs to be thinking about, shocks to industries and to businesses will always happen. You can never predict when a recession is going to happen. You can never predict when a boom is going to happen. But what a high-performance team does, and what separates them from everyone else, is they are continually preparing their business to mitigate any external shocks that you've got no control over. They are continually honing their business so they can weather any shocks, no matter when they happen, because you can never predict when it's going to happen.
Or take advantage of any opportunity, I should say.
That's right, and that's the critical bit about high-performance teams. They are always getting their balance sheet ready, getting their systems and controls in place so they can weather any shocks to the business, but also, and then if there are shocks to the industry, they can capitalise on their competitors by executing faster and getting that high-performance team working. or when the economy does turn and your industry starts to take off, you can deploy and get serious market share off your competitors because you're always thinking about what happens if I get an external shock to my business? What stress testing do I need to do right now to protect my business so I can weather any shock that happens and then capitalise on the upturn when it comes?
Right. And Michael, you've given us a very good benchmark. Does your team work like a pit crew? And if it doesn't, then it needs to, is the answer. Good to talk. Thanks for your time.
Cheers, Phil.